Hello, everyone. So I'm here with my friend Martha, and we've decided to come together to share a very fun conversation. The motive for this is Martha is beginning the second year of an online summit. This is Rebecoming the One. We want to talk about that, but we also want to not just talk about it. We thought this would be a fun opportunity to teach about something that we're both interested in. So we wanted to make this a unique experience for both of us that we would enjoy sharing with all of you. So what we're going to do in this video, I'm going to introduce Martha. We're going to briefly introduce the online summit that's going to be happening. This online summit is a free summit, but also includes a paid workshop period as well. And we'll briefly speak to that. We'll talk about today's topic, and at the end of our talk, we'll also talk about the paid workshops that will be coming on. So we're going to timestamp this entire conversation to make it really easy for you. The topic of our discussion today is going to be on how we learn astrology, the ways that we learn astrology. And it's a very interesting conversation. And when we were talking about it, I got really excited because both of us, and I think this is true for anyone that's studying astrology, we both have stories and very unique personal experiences that I imagine we wouldn't think to share on a day-to-day basis because it's not a conversation one tends to have, right? It's a very curious question, how we learn what we learn, how we know what we know in general. And when it comes to something like astrology, that's so incredibly multifaceted, it's fractal by its very nature. Like every facet of life is reflected in astrology. And so all the unique ways in which we look within and look without in order to learn astrology. So that's what we're going to be talking about, discussing, sharing stories about, unique experiences, thoughts, perspectives. So we'll get there soon. Let's start with introducing Martha. Hello, Martha. I would like to invite you to say hello, introduce yourself, and talk a bit about the Rebecoming the One Summit, what it is, why you're doing it, and of course, all of this will be linked in the description below.
So yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation too, because of course you're the main astrology teacher in my life. And so when we get to the conversation about how we learn astrology, I'm just laughing to myself because you have been for many, many years the main person I've learned astrology from. And yeah. So it's like, like I'm imagining one of those sets of mirrors where it's like you see the reflection after reflection after, it's like it gets so many reflections happening all at the same time. That's how I'm feeling in this moment about to have this conversation. But Rebecoming the One. So like you said, and like you were a part of, Rebecoming the One started last year in 2022. And it came to me in a vision on my birthday on March 5th, 2022. It was which was that was the day I turned 45. And it was 3 days after I had the third pass of my Uranus opposition. So on my birthday, I felt literally a bolt of lightning go through my body. And this vision just went pshoo, right in front of my eyes, like super Uranian experience. And I got shown the whole structure of this symposium, and I was told, do it. So the structure and the purpose of the symposium essentially is the overarching goal is to hold space, community healing space for the healing of our relationships to gender and sexuality. And last year, it ended up ballooning into this humongous thing way beyond what I expected, where there were 42 speakers and 1,400 participants, and it was held over 8 days. And I got a ton of feedback from people, hundreds of people writing me and saying that it changed their life, and on and on and on. So over the past year, I have met with several of the most vocal participants, and then also I've talked with a lot of last year's speakers, including you. And I got a lot of feedback, especially from the participants who said, please do it again. please have a little less content, but more time for it, so we can integrate. And also the sense I had was that it was meant to be much more interactive. So, there are a lot of summits out there where the format is that there are a bunch of talks and you maybe have 48 hours to listen to them. And then if you want more time, you buy a VIP package and you have more time. That is not the way this is structured. The way this is structured is that it's like, I'm almost hesitant actually even to use the word summit. It's meant to be, it is a spirit directed collective healing space. That's really what it is. And so I would call it more of like a earth spirit held conference. I don't even know what words to put, but this year it's going to be held over an entire month, the whole month of June 2023. There are going to be more than 30 free talks over the course of that month. And then, like you were saying, there are going to be optional paid workshops and a couple of healing sessions that people can choose to pay for if they want to support the project and if they want to go more deeply into any of the topics. So the month is going to be broken down by week, and the weeks essentially are going to be 1 week on the divine feminine, 1 week on the divine masculine, 1 week on the divine person, which has to do with like conversations around the non-binary, gender fluidity, transgender realities and needs, things like that, transgender youth needs. And then the last week, which is where your talk comes in, is going to be called Bringing Us All to Wholeness, Rebecoming the One. So part of the idea of how I'm holding it is that I think there's a lot that goes on in the world where people who identify as women maybe focus on the reemergence of the feminine, and people who identify as men focus on maybe the men's movement and healing around the masculine. But two things I don't see so much of is, number one, a place where it all gets brought together. We all come together. So we're not just in these camps. And we sit with the question of, okay, how do we do this? We all want the same thing, I think, right? So how do we do this together? And then number two, I don't see a lot out there that talks about the healing between the masculine and the feminine, that holds space for the reality and even celebrates the reality that there's a whole spectrum of gender identity and a whole spectrum of sexual orientation, and that this healing needs to be done in a way that includes everybody, whatever our identities happen to be, and that celebrates all of our identities, whatever they happen to be. If you're straight, if you're gay, if you're pansexual, if you're cisgender, if you're transgender, if you're non-binary, whatever, whoever you are, you're welcome and celebrated in this environment. I think that sums it up.
Great. And the element of it that I'm so appreciative of is just the emphasis on unity and togetherness. What I personally care so much about is having a stance in a relationship to life, to one another, to reality, where what's true doesn't shift. Like the essential truth. And I'm more soul identified, right? It's like my way of thinking is more in a non-dual way, where the soul itself is totally androgynous. There's no masculine, there's no male or female, there's no gender there. And I completely respect everyone on their own journey. Throughout the human experience, we're going to be experiencing and exploring different dimensions, different polarities in all different kinds of ways. And I think as we evolve and become more and more nuanced in the unique needs of the particular moment of our soul journey, it's important that we are able to explore these different polarities in whatever ways that we feel we need to at the time. It's all happening within this container of we aren't any of this anyway. We're on this greater journey of waking up from it all, really. And in that process, the safety and the permission to not need to force ourselves into any construct or definition that is not helpful. And that's how I think of all of this life, really. What's helpful? If it's helpful, embrace it. I'm going to be speaking about, so my talk during that last week is going to actually simply be on the Libra Aries axis, which is a very strong topic with the nodes moving into Aries and Libra. And I'm going to be speaking a lot about Libra and how really Libra speaks to relationship needs and how we are orienting to other people throughout our whole life in a very dynamic, fluid way. Our needs are always in some evolving process. What we need and who we think we are and what we want to experience itself is in some way always moving, because that's the point of evolution. We're not the static being that's like, this is who I am as I've been created and I'm always going to be this way. And that's really the deeper wisdom of Libra. How can we allow our relationships to reflect what's helpful for us right now? So yeah, I'm excited for that. And just like the diverse ecosystem of all the different voices, I understand there's a lot of psychotherapists, astrologers, healers, professionals in various fields that will be coming together to speak on all kinds of different topics. So again, check that out in the description below. At the end of our chat, I'll speak about, we'll come back and we'll speak about some of the other talks that'll be offered during the paid period and what I'll be teaching during the optional paid workshop period as well. Okay, so let's talk about how we learn astrology. I want to start us off by framing it in this way. Astrology is one of those things where if you say to someone, I'm studying astrology, that doesn't really tell you much, right? Because it's like, well, what kind of astrology? What's your perspective? How are you? It's like, it can mean so many things, from tropical, sidereal to the house system to, Hellenistic or evolutionary. I mean, there's so many different modalities and philosophical orientations, and they can be so different that one doesn't even see, and like they don't even touch each other in some instances, And so it's not just how we learn astrology. I really, when I tune into that question, I think more about what is it as a soul in this human experience that we're drawn to know. Astrology is going to serve that purpose. And so for me, when I began studying astrology, there was like a deep quest to understand more about who I am, more about what is this life all about. And it took a lot of trial and error of exploring different books and teachers, and certain things just didn't stick. For me, the evolutionary astrology teaching stuck very clearly. It really landed for me because that resonated with, it's like the puzzle piece fit, and I didn't have to effort to make it fit. So that's like one thing that I want to say. Our learning journey, I think in so many ways, is a matter of coming into resonance with, not so much a matter of I got to study something and know it. It's more like we are designed to investigate and have certain realizations within a particular track that resonate with like the edge of our own blossoming self-realization. And we're going to come across the teachers and the information that matches that. And then our learning is going to feel, there's going to be a harmonious quality to it. And this is like one of the things that I really say to people in terms of looking for teachers or wanting to study. Follow the resonance. Don't focus so much on reading the book or this idea of I have to consume this amount of content or know these things. And that's where this discussion is exciting, because honestly, I throw all of the rules out of the window here. And I want to keep everything within the realm of direct experience. To the conditioned mind, it looks like, yeah, but I should be reading this book on the history of astrology or on the basics. And it's like, no, you shouldn't be. You don't need to be doing anything. In fact, just because you want to learn astrology doesn't mean anything other than there's something meaningful there for you, but you're going to learn it in the way and use it and hold it and share it in the way that is right for you. There's no comparison when we're really authentic about our learning journey. So I'll share one personal story on this matter, and then I'll open up to see what you have to say about this. My actual learning journey began when I was in high school. I was in an Orthodox school, And there's this one day when my teacher taught this phrase, like this, we came across this like passage from the Talmud. It says something like yisrael me'al hamazalot, something like that, which is like the Jews, basically astrology doesn't apply to the Jews. And I remember hearing that, and that was a huge thing for me to hear. Why do you think that was so huge for me? I'm curious if you can guess why.
I mean, I was about to. This is what I was on the tip of my tongue. If you were gonna open it up to me at 2 seconds ago, I was about to say, Ari, one thing I think that has resonated so much with me about you, and why part of why I was drawn to you is because you often say astrology doesn't matter, and I'm ultimately not an astrologer. I mean, I'm paraphrasing you, and I could be getting that completely wrong, but
That's me a paraphrasing, but I get the idea. Yeah.
yeah. Like, and because that's what I feel about myself too. I mean, sure, you can put the word astrologer in there if you want for me, but that's not really has nothing to do with who I am or why I do astrology. Yeah. So what you just said somehow fits in with what I was about to come out of my mouth, um, but I don't know why exactly as that would have. I can't speak
That
for you.
and was exhilarating to me because it told me that in my Jewish tradition, the rabbis validated that astrology is real. Like I didn't
Oh,
care about the like it doesn't apply to the Jews part. I'm like, whatever, that's weird. That feels very it was like, but that means it's real. Right?
hilarious.
It's like someone saying to you, "Oh, don't worry, the boogeyman isn't gonna hurt you." Boogeyman's real? What? Right? It's different than me hearing that like the ancient rabbis said astrology is not real, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's validated. It wasn't even just like other people practice it. It's like it doesn't apply to the Jews. Like what? That means it applies, which immediately got my brain thinking. And I'm very Sagittarius, right? So
Right,
I'm
right.
growing up in that environment, and I'm like I was very devout to like wanting to know the truth. And a big part of my life journey in high school and before it even was this really wanting to do my best to understand God and who I am, and to make it work within the lens of Judaism. And of course, that brought me to a certain point where I had to really question everything around the time of my nodal return. But hearing that said, okay, if this stuff is real, then I have a lot of questions. Like, no one else seemed to like be that freaked out by it, right? Like no one else in my observations seemed to like be affected by it. I was like, wait, if astrology is real, like I need to understand what that means. So like there's correlation between planetary movements and human experience. What does that say? Now, I don't remember I don't remember when I learned that I'm a Sagittarius. I'm sure I just osmosed that knowledge at some point, but I also remember identifying two other boys in my class who were Sagittarius, and I was able to recognize the commonality. And I went on this summer program where there's this woman, this other teenage woman, girl, who was a Sagittarius, and she's like really laid back and played guitar and like really wise and simple. And I understood. And like I met this girl online in a Jewish AOL chat room, and I'm pretty sure she was a Sagittarius too, and also like she played guitar, had this like really cool, relaxed vibe. I couldn't necessarily articulate what it was I identified about all of these people that shared something, but I recognized there's a sort of like we don't sweat the small stuff, larger picture orientation. Um, you know, if I were to like paint a picture of it, it sort of felt like just here as opposed to like here. And I just felt that vibe in some way. It's not the best rendering of that energy. And I just remember noticing and intuitively said, and that's the sad thing. It's like I intuitively understood this. I don't know how I knew it, but I saw, and you know, there's triplets in my class who are all Leos. And I really, two boys and one girl, and amongst, or no, one boy and two girls, I guess. Well, anyway, amongst the boy, like I'm like, he's an archetypal Leo. I don't even know how I knew about Leo. I just saw his behavior and I'm like, this guy's a Leo. And so things like that were really intuitive for me. I remember when I first began reading about astrology, I didn't necessarily understand the archetypes, but when I thought about Gemini, I saw something small.
Mm.
And I kept on noticing, and I don't even know if this is true anymore, but I would meet Gemini people that were very small. And I don't know if that's like, there's any empirical basis to like smallness, but I became intuitively aware of Gemini being like, you can fit into a lot of places,
Mm.
right? Which is like Mercury. It's like the mutability of the mind. You can go into different scenes and talk to different people and adopt and access communication and dialogue with duality in unique ways. Um, but I didn't really understand the difference between Gemini and Pisces in those early days either. So there's like this beautiful beginner's mind, freshness to like a sensing of everything that I knew was real before I even really learned what it meant. So that's my first story and experience that I want to share.
Well, you know what it's bringing up for me? It's cracking me up. So, you know a bit about my 16-year-old, and um, I can't remember, 2 or 3 weeks ago, for some whatever reason, I was listening to one of your videos, and I wanted to know what they would think of this particular. It just like dawned on me to, for some reason, stop and listen to a little bit of it, and they cannot stand astrology. They think it's stupid, dumb. It's the thing their mom is into, like whatever. It's not scientific, blah blah blah. Okay. But they really resonate with you. They like you, right? And so I was like, okay, listen to a little clip of this. For some reason I want you to listen to this. And it was a video. I don't remember what you were talking about. It was something about your relationship to astrology and your way of thinking about astrology. It was a very Sagittarian. I mean, you're always Sagittarian, but it was particularly Sagittarian. And my 16-year-old has Jupiter in Sagittarius squaring their nodes. Okay, right in the middle of your Sagittarius stuff, right? So I had them listen to the, like a 2-minute clip of it, and they were like, and then I took away my phone to say, okay, that's enough. Like, what do you think? And they were like, no, no, give it back to me. I want to keep listening. And I was like, really? And they're like, okay, I don't care about this astrology stuff. I just love the way he thinks. I feel like like I feel like I could be like, I could say to him, look, this makes no sense to me, but he would get it and he wouldn't be offended, and then we could have them like an amazing conversation.
That's
So like,
awesome. I would love that too.
boom. I know. I know. So that's what's coming to mind. Like, there you are. The teenager, like clearly something is going off in there for them, right? And yeah, some intuitive thing is rising. But they're not willing to admit the interest yet because it's something their mom
Sure.
isn't.
And that's so great too, because it's also that state before we've learned, you know. I've been listening actually a little bit to I keep on forgetting his name. The creative guy. He wrote a book on, you know, he was like the musical producer for a lot of famous artists. He's a big hair, big beard. Anyway, half of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll mention it below. I said that like a month ago. I had mentioned him below. He talks about the creative like he apparently didn't even know much about how to operate a soundboard. He speaks about the creative process as being so inherent, so unique amongst kids because they don't have the rules yet. They weren't told what things are supposed to be. And I think learning is like that too.
Mm.
There's something so beautiful and enriching, and then it's like the second we're like training in a program or studying, it's like the innocent and the actual joy of it is easy to get lost. And I think it's so healing to remember the emptiness and the spaciousness of the learning experience and to come back to that. Do you have any experiences for yourself, in particular, like the learning that you had before you began learning, you know,
You mean just in general or around astrology?
around astrology?
Mm. I mean, honestly, nothing in particular is coming to mind. What I'm thinking of is that when I was in college, that was when I first got introduced to astrology, and I was waking up to all kinds of things spiritually at that point. And then I went down like the left brain version of learning astrology, and then I learned that there are multiple ways to calculate the zodiac, and then I got totally turned off to
Mm,
it, and I was like, forget about it, it's not real. And then it was 20 years until I came back to it.
mm.
um, and then now my approach to astrology, it certainly has some left brain element to it, but it's almost entirely not. So uh yeah, that's what comes up.
Yeah. Do you want to share any personal experiences or ways that you've deepened your knowledge of astrology? Any particular methods or experiences that you've had in general?
Yeah, for sure. The thing that comes to me about that is, um, so like I have said a million times, learning astrology with you has been the main way I've done it for several years. And what it has always felt to me like is that learning from you, like exactly what you said, is immediate resonance. Like the very first time I met you, the very first time I heard your voice, it was like boom, my soul knew you. My soul knew that I knew you from bazillion lifetimes and in the cosmos, like in other realms. So it was like it almost didn't matter what you would say. It was just like it felt almost like a drill going deep into my soul, just like through my heart to the very depths of my soul. It was like it was re-grounding me, rerouting me into something I think I've done forever. But also over those years, I've, as you know, on a personal level, I've also just had this humongous unraveling on all kinds of levels, and you've also played a role in that too. So the learning of the astrology and my soul growth were hand in hand, which is probably, I think, the point and part of why I was drawn to you, because that's how you hold astrology also, right? Um, and then I would say starting, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, or especially about a year ago, then I felt like my journey with learning directly from you in that way, kind of like it was like the drill that was going into my heart all the way to the depths of my soul. It's like it completed.
Mm-hmm.
and, and not like your and my relationship completed, like clearly there's other iterations to move forward, but like something came to an end with it. And so then there was a shift, and then I got connected with Heather Ensworth, and I started connecting with some people in the shamanic astrology world. And and it's like I'm still rooted, like that drill is still, drilled all the way to the depths of my soul, and I'm super grounded there in the your version of teaching evolutionary astrology, and I don't think I ever won't be. And now it gives me this space, and I feel like the way that you hold space for astrology, because you kind of, in a sense, you care, but you also don't care. Like you don't have an ego attachment to my students must follow my way. Like actually, I think I'm speaking for you. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would really bother you if you had disciples who bowed at your feet and wanted to be mini Aries or something. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that's bad, but that's not what I feel you looking for in me at all. And I feel lots of freedom to be who I am, which is great. And so now what I feel happening in my world, and has been happening for at least the last year, but probably longer, is now it's like my soul got deeply rooted in whatever it was that needed to come through you in your teaching to me. And now I am like taking flight. So now I'm going into, getting super called just on a spiritual level into the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and just I don't know, it's like my spirit world is taking over. And my relationship to astrology always has been very deeply rooted in my own relationship to my own spirit guidance, but it's now like, because I'm so deeply rooted in your way, then I can I have a foundation that I can count on, in a sense, and I can fly and not feel like I'm gonna lose myself. But then I can expand to infinity, literally. And I don't know yet where that's taking me, but I feel like my next level, like the next thing that's resonating for me is, I feel like I need to learn. This year I took a course with Heather Ensworth. I'm almost at the very end of that course with her, where she does more of a shamanic personal relationship version of learning astrology by having a personal relationship with the planets themselves. That resonates for me in a big way. And then I feel like now I'm being also called very specifically. It's like my soul tells me exactly who I need to study with and why and when.
Yeah.
And so like the next thing coming up is, I think I need to take the Venus course with Kaylin Castell, like very specific, because tons of people teach Venus, right? But it's like, it needs to be with her. Like, why her? I love her, but like I love all kinds of other people teaching the same thing. So for whatever reason, I think it's meant to be her. And then I also feel like the next part of my learning is, I really need to know the stars, like the actual stars.
Mm.
Like I was chatting with Gemini Brett yesterday, and I was like, am I meant to take it with him? I don't I was feeling like with that compass in my soul, in my heart, in my being, like, is it supposed to be with him? Is it supposed to be over here? I don't know. Like, where is that? Right. I'm trying to find, it hasn't gone ding, ding, ding yet, but I've got the ding, ding, ding with Kaylin with the Venus thing. Right. And then I know you have something coming up this summer where I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Yes, I'm supposed to do that with Ari. Yeah. So
What a great sharing, because I want to highlight a couple of things from what you just spoke to. Your personal journey with studying astrology is an example of open-mindedness, because you didn't come into it from this agenda. Like, it's never really been for you about, I need to become a professional astrologer, or I need to make money doing this, or and not that that's wrong, meaning it's simply matter of fact that hasn't been your orientation. It's sort of been a guidance and a draw. And it almost makes me think that, like, it's not really about the thing that we're studying, it's the way that we're studying it and whom we're studying it with, or whom we're learning it from. Or like the content and the presentation of the content is like the sacred marriage. And that there's some sort of like a relationship and sharing and osmosis that wants to happen within your own soul. And for you, and knowing you, and from what you shared here, it feels like it's inclusive of astrology, but also is not necessarily like going deeply in a particular paradigm, but there's relevance to it. It just makes me think about how there's so many ecosystems out there, like there are forests that are very much about certain species and very what they are. I'm saying I'm not giving a good example. There are so many ways of coming into knowledge, and all of this world and all of the teachings and the teachers that share it are just like all these infinite angles to come back to ourselves and to come into the truth. And then you're being primed to share and be available in a very unique Martha way. A lot of people come to me and they're wanting to study, or there's like a very common disheartenment, especially once we get into more left brain things. And it's like the innocence of the beginner's mind is like, oh my God, this is really hard. I don't understand how to interpret Jupiter sesquiquadrate to Mars. This is like so confusing. Like, I got to read these books and like how to, I mean, I do, but
no, you do.
Or like, it's such a common dynamic. And I'm so reflective as a teacher about how I can be presenting and sharing this information in a way where it's inviting my students to stay in a place of openness and curiosity and relaxation, where the soul calling for knowledge, where the soul calling for direct experience and direct insight is at the front of it all. There are astrologers out there that don't work with sesquiquadrates, right? There are astrologers out there that don't do a lot of the things that I do, or do a lot of the things that I don't do. So there's something about the authenticity of our path that extends to how we're learning astrology or the extent to which we're even studying it. I really want to validate that. Follow the resonance of whatever you're drawn to. Like, it's like mechanics. Yes, I need to learn from this teacher. I thought I had nothing to do with mechanics, but that kind of feeling, that sense, there's something there. And in a mercurial way, like everything connects to everything else. All information is interwoven ultimately. It's like when you learn one thing about one thing, it does benefit and serve our learning of some other thing as well. Life is interdisciplinary from a Mercury perspective. I want to share a couple other stories in line with the topic of our conversation here. So there's a time in my life, again, when I was so for me, I got really into EA, and I'm an example of someone where when it comes to my astrological studies, there's a little bit of time in the beginning of searching, but when I found EA and those that I've studied within the Jeffrey Wolf Green EA paradigm, that became my sole practice. I am not closed to other astrologers, and as I've matured, there are times where I will study something from another astrologer. I've learned a lot from Gemini Brett because at a certain point I found myself deeply drawn to know the astronomy, and I've really taken a lot from him and from others as well. And every once in a while there are things that sort of oh, this feels relevant. Like right now I'm really soaking up Vesta.
Ooh.
I never thought I would be studying Roman history, but I've become interested in Roman history because not that we can understand the asteroid Vesta through Roman history in its entirety, but it reflects some aspect of Vesta. I'm really drawn to learn more about Vesta pre-Roman history.
Yes.
What was that archetype, right? The Vestal virgins that were chaste, right? But their bodies were sacrosanct and they lived a life of service. I mean, there's so much relevance to the Vestal archetype, but I'm really drawn to get more into what was the whole sexuality piece before the virginity archetype. There's so much richness in Vesta that I'm drawn. Why? It's just my soul calling that forward. I had no clue that I would be really into Roman history right now and wanting to read books on sexual initiation rites and just wanting to really grasp the Vesta archetype as far back as I can in history. So we have to follow that path. For most of my astrological journey, it's just been people ask me all the time, have you studied or do you know anything about human design? People have told me my human design probably a dozen times by now. I can't remember it for the life of me. The things that aren't relevant at the time won't stick, and there's no judgment about it or at all. It just won't stick. And that's what I want everyone to understand, and I'm learning it as I share this. This is what learning is. We have to honor and respect what we're vibrationally drawn to at the time. That's going to match us. Life is vibrational. It's not linear and some sort of Newtonian study it, know it. It's vibrational. So in lieu of that, when I was studying, I would come across thresholds of, maybe having an insight and then just sort of plateauing for a while where there's nothing new, right? And we could all relate to that. I remember a time, and this is when Uranus was in Pisces, and I decided to put Jeff Green's Uranus book underneath my bed. And in one night, I feel like it was just downloaded to me. And I had a particular dream about Uranus and Aries and things like that. But it just, and it's not that I even can say that I woke up saying I knew anything, but the receptors for knowing were opened up, And I've had experiences like that where many years ago I dreamt that I can do a headstand, and prior to that point, when I was practicing yoga a lot, I wasn't able to do a headstand, and after that dream, I was able to do a headstand. You hear a lot of experiences like that where something happens on the inner plane, and there's no preparation for it. You didn't have to do anything, read anything, do anything with your body, something on an internal space was opened up, and then the physical reality just follows. I can share many experiences of listening to other spiritual teachers and then really grasping Uranus more deeply, really grasping Neptune more deeply, really grasping Pluto more deeply. And that's where I think astrology is actually best as an interdisciplinary study, because we're looking at life. We're looking at just the intelligent design of life itself. So the more we learn about anything, the more we're going to be learning about planetary functions innately, because the planetary functions are reflected in everything and anything. So, reading Marshall McLuhan and understanding much more about Mercury, listening to Adyashanti and hearing him speak about the unconditioned mind, or reading Krishnamurti, right? And just grasping more, oh, this is what Uranus is about. Mm-hmm. And then just having our own personal spiritual experiences. One of the deeper ways that I've sort of just like come into direct seeing is with plant medicine. And this isn't something I talk about very much, but on these deeper journey experiences in working with plant teachers, for me, now this is a funny thing, Martha, because I don't hear voices. I don't hear, like, no one's coming out to talk to me. I never, I don't ask a question and hear an answer. My personal experience is sort of inner insight. And it often comes through the vibrational dance of coming back into the moment and getting it, getting this present moment again. And then other thoughts are sort of clarified in that way. And there's been so much of that when it comes to astrology, and the simplicity of seeing all of it as a direct experience. And this is where I come back to the EA teachings too, because the EA teachings, in my experience, really reflect direct perception and direct experience of Jeff Green articulating it. People who haven't had these experiences, it's very easy for it to become a religion or a dogma. And I don't want that ever for myself or for anyone. I simply often have the experience of almost unintentionally and accidentally, which I think is how it has to be, coming into a direct insight and then understanding the nature of things, grasping it. And then I can go back to the teachings and I'm almost reframing or reworking what he wrote in a way that reflects my new expanded understanding of reality. That's a part of the deep value that I find in EA. It's one of those things where it keeps on revealing itself as I deepen in my own experience. Not to say that I necessarily always agree with everything that's ever been taught within that paradigm, but the essence of it is something that I find is just continually affirmed and clarified through my own direct experience of reality. When we were chatting, you mentioned that one of the ways that you've been learning and are interested in is actually looking at the astronomical reality of the planets. Mm-hmm. That's a topic that is so, if we really respect the holographic reality of things, we can learn so much by opening our hearts to astronomy. Mm-hmm. And there's the astronomy of I love knowing what's going on in the natal chart astronomically. But then there's the how is everything astronomically reflecting the energetics of what is in the astrology itself? Do you have any insights or stories to share about that?
Yeah. So I think there's two things. One thing is, you talk about, and a lot of people talk about this idea that the planets, the transits aren't doing anything to us, right? It's an internal, transits are in a sense a reflection of internal reality or whatever. And I agree. And the other thing I've been tweaking in what I understand about myself and my reality around all of this is that something I didn't get so much from the EA version of astrology is that the cosmos is a literal physical thing. It actually is there, right? And I'm not saying this isn't in EA.
Sure.
This is not some, yeah. Oh, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I'm appreciating that obvious statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right. So and maybe it's because most of my learning came through you and you're so Sagittarian and so whatever. But it took me a minute to be like, wait a second. Saturn is a planet in the solar system, and the Earth is a planet in this. Okay, like I oriented myself to this physical reality. And then when I was doing that, I realized, wait a second. So I'm also an energy worker, a body worker too. Like I was a psychotherapist, I was a body worker, do a lot of Reiki, craniosacral therapy. So I think in terms of vibration a lot, which I know you do too. And so I was thinking, okay, so of course we know the moon has physical effects on the earth, and we can see that in the tides. Like that's the most obvious version of that, right? And we know for a fact that the light of the sun has effects, physical, blatant effects on us. Okay, so everything is vibration. So clearly there has to be a vibrational relationship between us and anything in existence, which would certainly include all of the planets and all of the asteroids and all of everything in the solar system. So on the one hand, I agree that like I don't like the way of naming a transit as being something like hitting me. At the same time, something that's feeling really important to me is also the reality that there is a vibrational relationship of anything and everything. So when there is like Jupiter just entered Taurus and blah blah blah, um there is a vibrational thing happening in physical reality. And so that's number one that feels really important. But then also what's so cool, and this is something I dove more into when I've been studying with Heather Ensworth this year, is she teaches a lot about the physical being of each of the planets. So for like Uranus is my favorite example.
Mm.
um so we think of Uranus as having to do with change, like radical differentness or something, right? On a certain level. And I think you would say, and I would say, that really Uranus is about aligning with the intelligence of the divine, or the energetic of the intelligence of the divine, or something. So it's not necessarily about change, but it certainly can be associated with difference or change or uniqueness, or you put it in your own words, but something like that. But what's so hilarious and awesome, and I would even call it like cute, if a planet can be cute, is Uranus. Okay, so most planets rotate on their axis. um the rotation is, I guess you could say, like parallel to the sun. So it's the same version of rotation that we have. Sorry.
It's probably parallel with the ecliptic, right?
Okay, there we go. There we go. That's the way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, Uranus is perpendicular to our way of rotating. The Earth's. Do you see what I'm? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So if most of the planets rotate like this, Uranus rotates like this.
That's cool. So let's talk about that for a moment, because we have ecliptic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know the Earth, for example, is at a 23.5 degree tilt.
Mm-hmm.
So its spin is slightly deviant from the
Slightly.
ecliptic, right? And that's the basis for our season. That's the basis for the 4 cardinal points of the zodiac, where the galactic equator intersects the ecliptic and where it's at greatest deviance. So you're saying that Uranus, just like the Earth is 23.5, that Uranus is like closer to 90 degrees
Yes. I wish I had like a
from the
something
ecliptic
like,
or from the Earth, something like that, right?
right. So like if let's say you're the Earth, and let's pretend you're at a slight tilt and you're spinning,
Yeah.
like you're like going around in a circle like this, and I decide to be Uranus and I want
Yeah.
to do my spin. I would need to like levitate off the ground and spin, like you would be spinning here and I would be spinning here. Does
Let me
that
look
make
it
sense?
up right now while we're talking. Let's find out. Um,
Yeah.
Uranus's spin relative to Earth. Let's see what we can learn about this. It's fun. It's like I wouldn't necessarily be researching it, right? But now we're talking, and I'm like, this is fun. Like whatever it's gonna be, it's gonna be so joyful and beautiful to know,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Why not?
There we go. Yeah, yeah. Uranus's tilt is almost 98 degrees it's from the ecliptic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Earth's tilt is about 23 degrees. Uranus is 98 degrees. So that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
wow.
Right. And then we associate Uranus with being unique and different and doing things in the way that we haven't thought of, all these things, right? And well, here we are.
That's really cool. Well, this was a fun, engaging discussion. I hope some of the things that we've shared here are exciting for those that have come this far. Thank you for watching, and let's end this video with a quick reconnect with the upcoming Spirit Earth Symposium, whatever you want to call it. The paid workshops are a new feature to what you're creating, and I just want to invite you to briefly speak to what they're about, and then I'll also share what my workshop's going to be about.
Cool. Yeah, so last year the whole symposium was free, the whole 42 talk, and actually it's all still available and all still free. And when you sign up for the free this year's symposium, there's a link you can easily access last year's talks, and Ari is on there and did an amazing talk on Saturn last year. So yeah, my intention last year was that it would all be free, and still this year I hold that intention that most of it is free. And and at the same time, part of the feedback I got from myself and from participants even was, hey, you know what, this is a huge amount of work on your part and on the speaker's part, and so please have a way for it to be easy for people to support this healing space and honor your work, meaning me and the speakers, but also to go more deeply into certain things. So throughout the month of June, there are going to be a total of 14 optional paid offerings. Most of them are going to be held on the Fridays of the month, and they will be grouped, like each Friday of the month will have optional paid workshops that go with the theme of that week. So like at the end of the Divine Feminine week, there are 3 optional paid workshops. Same with at the end of the Friday of the Divine Masculine week, 3 optional paid workshops having to do with the Divine Masculine, and so on, right? But people of all genders are welcome at all of them. You do not need to be a woman identified to come to the Divine Feminine ones. Please come to anything and everything you want. And I also have structured it so that it's a sliding scale set of options for paying, because I want it to be accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So if you feel called to come to multiple of them, or just to support this work in general, there's an all-in-one bundle option where you can get access to all of them, all 14. And that pricing starts at like $185. So if you do the math, that is very inexpensive. And there are options to pay more if you feel able and called to support it in a bigger way. And you can also just sign up just for one workshop at a time, like Ari's workshop, which maybe you want to talk about.
Yeah. So I'll be doing a deep dive into the Aries Libra Axis in our chart, looking at where is Aries and Libra. The polarity of Aries and Libra by itself is a very particular learning journey. The houses that they occupy are really qualifying, describing where is this learning happening, this integration between self-will, self-leadership, and how we're really learning this dance of relationship, of giving and sharing and asking and receiving and saying yes and saying no. All these really important Libra lessons. So we're going to be looking at that again, applying the transiting nodes in our own chart as well. Where is that happening in our own chart? We'll have the opportunity to look at some examples as well.
Yes, and I will say I'm personally very excited about this because my nodes are in Aries and Libra.
Libra, yeah, right there.
Yeah, and Pluto, and in addition, right? So you're a perfect example, right? So that your free talk is on the Aries Libra axis in general, and how Pluto squaring the nodes coming up with the nodes switching into Aries and Libra, how just your general thoughts about that. But then your paid workshop is going to go more deeply into all of what you talk about in the free workshop, and will be more personalized. And yeah, So for me personally, right, like given that the nodes are switching into the same axis that my natal nodes are in, I'm going to be having my nodal opposition at the same time Pluto is squaring the nodes. So it's a really, really big deal in my personal life. And that's what you're going to be, you're not going to be focusing on me, but I'm just saying you'll be focusing on the more personal in
You want
general.
to be a volunteer? I'm looking forward to it. Okay, Martha, thank you for sharing this chat with me.
Thank you.
And again, more info in the description below for the upcoming summit. That begins what day?
June 1st. It's the whole month of June.
Month of June.
June
Okay.
30th. Mm-hmm.